Good morning and welcome back to the Closer's Inner Circle podcast with Denise Griffitts and Ben Gay III. Now, this is part of our Sales Infiltration series, and our topic today is about the level you're playing at. Is it costing you deals? Last week, we broke down levels 2 and 3, and that's where most reps live. They're grinding harder, they're getting better, but they're still reacting to the buyer. This week, we're resetting the foundation with level 1. And then we're going to jump ahead to level 4. So be sure to go back and listen to what we had to say last week. Because if you don't understand this gap, you'll never reach true sales infiltration. So level 1 is the script follower. You rely on the script. You sound solid until the buyer goes off script, which is going to happen. Count on it. Then everything slows down. And then level 4 is the frame controller. You're not reacting anymore. You're leading. And now the buyer feels like it was their idea because they're on board. So, and I'll tell you in a little bit later how to get your copies of the closers. I'll tell you that at the end. But today we are sponsored by me, your partner in Success Radio, our preferred partner program. If you want more than visibility, if you want to be positioned as a trusted resource before the buying conversation even starts, this is where you do it. The preferred partner program on Your Partner in Success Radio, which is the parent of this particular podcast, connects you directly with an engaged audience of business owners. And globally, you're going to be talking to people globally. You're talking with an audience of business owners, decision makers, and professionals who are already in growth mode. So take a look and see how to align your brand with the conversations that are already happening globally. Go to yourpartnerinsuccessradio.com and go to the Partner with Us page. Then, Ben, remind me to tell people how to get the closers' books.
Now?
No, later. You're not listening to me, are you?
I need a note to remind you.
Yeah. See, you're supposed to be going, yes, ma'am, of course, Denise, but you're not doing it right. We'll talk about that. So anyway, level 1, let's talk about that because we skipped past it the last time we were here, but it's important. It's a good beginning.
And the label on it is scripting and controller, etc. What was the label on part 1? Lost you, Denise.
Oh, I'm sorry. Script follower. You rely on the script. You sound solid until the buyer goes off script. We've talked about that a lot. You know, you're relying on your script, but you really don't know what you're talking about.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah.
We have meetings on Wednesday. Yeah, the scripting gets such a bad name because 1, people are lazy and don't want to learn a script. 2, because when they have learned it, sort of, it sounds scripted in most cases. And a lady called me the other day. I forget what she was trying to sell, but somehow I got on the phone with her. And all I was trying to do was clarify who she was and who she was with before I decided whether to end it or not. And I said, "Excuse me, I'm very sorry. I didn't understand what you said. Who are you with?" And she said something in pharmacy was involved. And I thought, okay, I have a pharmacist, don't need to talk to her. But before I could say that, she went right back to the next word in the script she was delivering when I interrupted her, not double back and make sure I'm back up to speed or go forward and change the nothing. Went right back. So I tested her and I interrupted her again, saying, something like, "I'm sorry, we have a bad connection. I didn't understand." And she tried again to tell me who she was with. Side note, don't hire companies to help you that are in countries where they're going to put somebody on the line on your behalf, that's obviously from another country and not well informed and totally dependent on the script. Don't do that. It's better not to make the call.
I mean,
You
like
can,
AT&T,
yeah,
try to get an American voice over there. It's almost impossible.
exactly. It's better for you to make 10 calls a day than make 1,000 calls to one of these imaginary services that hopefully people won't remember the call came from you indirectly because it makes you look bad. If they do recognize it's you, then you're going to make 1,000 bad impressions that day in your potential marketplace. So don't use them unless they're it's not being pro-American. It's I'm pro-sales and marketing. And if I know that I'm talking to somebody from the Philippines with a passing acquaintance with English, I just disconnect. Except for this lady, I was playing with it because I just wanted to see how stupid she was. But normally I just disconnect. And the trick there is disconnect while you're talking. They assume that was a technical glitch. If you disconnect while they're talking, they might call you back, either upset or try and pick up on their script again or whatever. But anyway, scripting gets a bad name, and yet we all watch television. Everything you see is scripted. The newscasters are reading off a teleprompter. The actors and actresses are reading off the script or have memorized the script they were given. Same in the movie theaters, same in much of life. There's nothing wrong with scripting, just don't get caught at it.
Right. And last week we talked about script chunks, and I wanted to go back to that when you're through with this thought.
Well, that's where I was leading. Script chunks are different. A script is like I used to do in Holiday Magic Cosmetics, as did everybody else who held the opportunity meetings. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ben Gay. I'm a general distributor with Holiday Magic Cosmetics. It's my pleasure to welcome you, blah, 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 for 37 minutes, word for word. And then you showed the film, and the film said, turn to the person who brought, at the end, said, turn to the person who brought you here and ask how you can get started in Holiday Magic. Lights came back up, and whoever brought you to the meeting whipped out his or her legal pad, and they went into scripting. 6 closes, all scripted, and you got to hear all 6, unless you bought on script 1, 2, 3, or whatever. And they were word for word. They were so scripted that once we turned it over to the group, the sponsors and their guests, we encouraged them to, pat their foot, take a beat, etc., so that they weren't saying verbatim what the person next to them was saying to his or her prospects. When not done properly, it sounded like the Mormon Tabernacle Choir trying to close you. So after there's nothing wrong with a scripted presentation from the front of the room to everybody, if it's a good one, if it's been tested, etc. But when it gets back down to you, then you should have all that information in your head, but you use what's appropriate and needed based on what the prospect just said to you. If you ask me about any item in our product line, products and or services, and it's specific to one, I will tell you word for word the answer to that. If you want to think it over, I will tell you word for word the answer to that. Those are script chunks. It's not 37 minutes. It's not like the lady on the phone who doubled back to the previous word and started over. You've discovered, you and or the people who preceded you in the business have discovered the best way to answer that question, to present that information. That's a script chunk, and there's nothing wrong with it. We've talked about this before, but Hal Holbrook, Mark Twain, 9.5 hours of memorized material, but his show was 1 hour. So he started with the opening joke as a temperature taker, same joke every time, same story every time, to see where they were in excitement about being at this presentation. And I do that with my name. Standing ovation if the introduction was done right, and the introduction of me is scripted. I tell the person who's going to introduce me, we won't leave this to chance. I sent you a copy earlier, but in case you don't have it with you, this is exactly what you're supposed to say. It's tested. It's proven. I've done it right. I've done it wrong. I finally got it right. Read this verbatim, or when you introduce me, I won't come up. I'll applaud and sit there with everybody else, because I don't come up till you've done this right. I'm sort of the Chuck Berry of the sales training world. Chuck Berry would sit I met him once, and great guy. He would sit in the dressing room and wait for the money because many of the promoters, raised some of the money, gave enough of a deposit to get him there, but they're still selling tickets out at the box office, hoping to raise enough money to pay him. And he would say to them, I'd say, we're close, we're close. You want to go on? He said, no, I'll go on when all the money is here in my
In my
hand.
hand. Yeah.
Yeah, take your time. And I said, how long would you sit there? He said, I've sat there and I've gone home or back to the hotel.
I don't blame him.
Yeah, he said, I don't strike a note on my guitar till I've been paid. And that was based on scripting what they said at the box office, scripting what they said to get him there. And then, of course, his act was completely scripted. Spontaneous though it looked, he did the same songs in the same order every time. Maybe if he got some huge reaction to some song, he might shift the order. Oh, you like good old-fashioned rock and roll tonight? Here's another one. But then as soon as he struck that chord, he was scripted again. So scripting is not bad. It's tedious to learn it. But if you've been in selling 30 days or more, you're already on a script. It may be the one they gave you. Congratulations if it's a good one. It may be the one you developed. Congratulations if it's a good one. Or probably just what you drifted into saying. And after a while, you say that over and over and over again. That's scripting. I'm not arguing for or against scripting. I'm arguing for good scripting, tested scripting, the most effective way to give that presentation word for word. And then if
Is
somebody
to
interrupts you,
practice it. You have to practice.
absolutely. If somebody, I used to practice in the car with a tape recorder sitting on a seat beside me before they were built into the dashboards. I would play the script and mouth along with it just so I had it locked into my head. Now, the prospect hasn't been to prospect school. You'd think they have sometimes since they all have the same objections, but he or she really hasn't been to prospect school, so they may or may not say what you need to use your next part of the script chunk. Fine. Change your next part of the script chunk. Again, if you've been selling over 30 days, you have heard every objection other than highly personal ones. I have polio or I have cancer, or I have whatever. But even that comes under the sickness script. But you've heard every objection. Well, if you know every objection, almost word for word, because they all say them the same, then why wouldn't you have a prepared response, a script chunk for that? And if they, in the middle of your presentation, take a hard left and say something else, that's fine. React appropriately and come up. And then after you've blended and shifted gears, come up with a script chunk that covers that situation. There are no secrets in selling, none. They've
Yeah,
all been
you've said
exposed.
that.
Yeah,
Right.
they've all
And
been exposed and delivered, written in books. Read one of my 36 books or one of my 7 or 8 versions of the closers, and I'm told there's over 300 closes in there, plus lots of other selling tips. You don't need all of those. Find a system. I don't care if it's a friendly competitor of mine. Find a sales system that you like, agree with, and are excited about using. I have many good friends who use Zig Ziglar's material in addition to mine, but Zig is who they were most famous of, a favorite of, and who introduced them to selling. My partner, Jimmy Rucker, the greatest salesman I ever personally worked with. I always say that. That's a script chunk. Every time I mention his name, I say that.
every week, I think he owes us money right now.
I think so too. But I've
Yes.
tried hard to get money out of Rucker over the years, and let's not waste our time.
Well,
He
I'll talk to him. Maybe he'll listen to me. Doubtful, but I can try.
he attributes his success uh, to my father to a degree because he's the one that lured us into selling. We both went to work for him. But once we got in the sales world and started going to seminars and all, J. Douglas Edwards was his first impact, probably mine too, but with Rucker, whatever Doug said was gospel. That was it. He wrote it down and did it. So I thought I wrote Sales Closing Power as a tribute to Doug Edwards. It's from notes I took with him. It's from his actual recordings and so on. And when I read it or I'm explaining it to somebody, I always think of Rucker because I can hear Doug Edwards saying whatever the thing was. If you have a built-in objection, for instance, bring it up first and brag about it. When you ask a closing question, shut up, no matter how long it takes and so on. So I hear Doug Edwards doing it in the original form, and I then listen to Rucker do it for years. And we grew up together in selling, grew up together, period, really, but grew up together in selling and learned together. And we had many different sources. Rucker believes J. Douglas Edwards is the fountainhead of sales. Fine. It's worked well for him. Others believe it's Zig Ziglar, others believe it's me, others believe it's Tommy Hopkins or whatever works for you. But then dig in and turn it into scripts and script chunks. So if somebody wakes you up in the middle of the night and says, quick, here's an objection. You have a script chunk that just comes out at that point. It's tested and proven and it will serve you well, I promise you. And it is far better than that wing it approach many of you are using now. Look in your bank account, and you'll see how well wing it
Right.
is doing for you.
Well, you're going
So
to miss
that's it on
something
scripts.
important. And I have to interrupt just a little bit because remember last week I just kind of threw this out, but my business partner, Jennifer Jensen, she's also one of our sponsors. Thank you, Jen. And she's brilliant. I'm telling you, she's absolutely brilliant. I always think I'm the smartest person in the room. I'm not. She is. And I bow to her every day, but we are creating rehearsal studios. One is for your partner in success radios for podcasters, and the other one is for the Closers Inner Circle podcast. So what we are doing, and I'm going to have a long chat with you and take notes. We need to create archetypes. Like, who are you going to be using the script chunk on? Is it somebody who is street smart, story rich? They're not going to really listen to you. Is it the executive who's guarded, measured, reveals little without the right question? I have all kinds of these, but we're going to make it possible for people to go in, pick their archetype, and then create and practice their script chunks and hear them back. So it's a great way that we're creating it. It should be done in a few weeks where people who listen to this, who want to know more about sales infiltration, and I need to talk to you about that chapter too. I have a list of things. Ask Ben, ask Ben, ask Ben. Ben is going to hate me, but ask Ben anyway. And we're going to create that for people who are in sales and just need to get comfortable with what they're saying and who they're saying it to.
Absolutely. And in the Closers Part 1, there's probably the most popular section in there are the personality profiles, where
I
it
got
gives,
it. I'm writing that down.
yeah,
Personality profiles.
it's not
Okay.
it's not absolute. Few things are. There are bankers and CPAs with good senses of humor. They're just rare. And
Engineers and attorneys, never mind. You just
yeah,
stick to your
so
chunk.
but it gives you an overall view of who you're dealing with, and that's
Right.
important to me when I sit down with somebody on the computer, on the internet, Zoom, or in person in their home or office. One of the first things I dial in is who am I talking to? And then I ask a few little test things to make sure that's true, because not all accountants are dull. It's just that seems because of the preciseness of numbers, it seems to draw that type of person, I guess. But it's true whether you agree with it or not. And it's a sweeping generality, but it gets you in the ballpark. It gets you in the neighborhood of knowing what that person needs to hear or probably wants to hear. And you ask a few test questions, and if they're not one of those, then you go on to something else. It said it's not absolute, but I would say if I had to put a number on it, I'd say it's 80% accurate across the board. Uh, the way they think and react and so on. The easiest person in the world to sell after you get past the ego antler rubbing, where the two deer meet and try and rub that felt off on each other as to who is the dominant one. Easiest person is a salesperson because they're secretly pulling for you. They're learning while you're talking, and they appreciate a good sales presentation. I've told you I have more Ginsu knives than Ginsu has, because if I go to a county fair, an event, or anything where they have booths, somewhere buried in there is the food chopper guy and the Ginsu knife guy. And I'll always stop and listen to their presentation. If they're good, I tell them who I am and maybe send them a copy of the closers if they don't have one, and buy something because I want to encourage, in Don't Shoot the Dog, Dr. Karen Pryor said, reward the behavior you want to see repeated, ignore the behavior you don't want to see repeated. I want to see good salespeople presenting things effectively, good products effectively. And when I see it, I reward it. I don't need another Ginsu knife, as Gigi
I
tells me
do.
every
Tell
time.
give
We'll send you
Gigi.
one.
Christmas is coming.
Yeah. It may have a little corned beef in the teeth. A lot of them,
Oh,
but they're thrown into the drawer,
oh,
and we don't necessarily have a system for getting out the cleanest one or the newest one or whatever. I'll try and find you one. But the
good to
Ginsu
know.
knife is a great demonstratable product, and they have that down. I could walk up to a booth somewhere, record what he says, go over to another booth selling Ginsu knives, either at that event or the next event, and when he starts, hit the play button. They would say exactly the same thing with the same little joke, the same little pause for humor, etc., because they've worked it out. It's like the Wall Street Journal letter that I've told you about many times. It's their control piece. They've been trying to beat it for 40 or 50 years and haven't. I'm sure 50 years ago they changed a word here or there as they refined it, but they haven't made a change in it in over 40 years, I'm told, because it's the most effective way to convince somebody in writing that they should subscribe to the Wall Street Journal. It's a classic. And there's one now. I know you don't watch much television, but there's one now on television, Riverbend Ranch, and they're selling Angus beef. Not
Oh, you
unlike,
told me about that. Yeah. I'm
not
one
un,
of those odd people. I don't eat steaks. I don't like them. I'll eat beef if it's a hamburger. That's it. That's all I'm interested in.
they sell those too.
Ah.
they'll
Well,
be
now you
happy.
got my attention.
They'll be happy to ship it to you. The uh, Anyway, Riverbend Ranch is a perfect sales presentation. I don't do any business with them. I don't know anybody that's there, but I've watched it. And then next time I was on, I said, Gigi, you got to come watch this. I've seen it once before. It is perfection as a sales presentation without even bringing up what the objections are. It overcomes every objection to the point we have friends. One is a vegan, one is a vegetarian. They both ordered separately, two different families, ordered a case. I don't know what they got in it, but a case of Riverbend because they said, what harm could it do? I mean, it's just one case. What harm could it do? And they bought it. I haven't really checked back to find out once they got in. Well, one of them did. One of them called Gigi and said, that's the best thing I've ever eaten. And I
Really?
don't know if it was the vegetarian or the vegan, but whatever it was, swapped over to the other side. But it
Huh.
was based on a perfect sales presentation. There are little places where you could say something. Uh, one, they're cutting up the beef and now you're going to serve it to your people, and they show the people the picnic table. They never say eat, chew on, or anything like that. They say serve it to your favorite guests or something along
Uh,
those lines. So even when there's a chance to say something that might get a vegan or a vegetarian to recoil in shock, They don't do that. It's a classic sales presentation. I'm sure people can Google it, but it's River Bend Ranch. Want to see good sales presentation? That's it. Or Google the Wall Street Journal sales letters, and it has to do with 20 years ago, 25 years ago on a bright morning. I was cleaning out some books the other day. It's time for shelf cleaning. And I found a book, The 50 Greatest Sales Letters of All Time. And sure enough, in it was the Wall Street Journal letter, word for word, the way they've used it for over 40 years. It's a classic. And those are all script chunks written or on television recorded, but they're script chunks. They finally got it right. I'm sure there was much testing. I'm sure that I would have cringed if I had seen some of the early versions of those commercials, but they worked on it and sanded it down till there's not a splinter you can find in the presentation. You can run your hand over it backwards and forwards. It's perfect. You're looking for something like that. Then all you have to do is spend your time in front of qualified prospects, making sure, of
Right.
course, that you're representing a quality product that's competitively priced, and then that you're sitting in front of qualified prospects. Selling is so simple, but made complicated by people trying to take shortcuts. Uh, if I was going to go into the automobile business, I
You mean
would,
cars?
yeah, cars. Thank you very much.
My sister can't say linoleum, so she calls it tinfoil.
Yeah. Rucker and I were sitting in a bar one day when we were in the Coast Guard, and either I forget whether I did it or he did it, but we both had maybe a couple more beers than we should have had. And he looked down at the floor where some beer had sloshed. He says, "We spilled beer on the linoleum." So,
See, that's about she'll try, and then she'll try Congolium, and I just let her do it because
yeah.
it's entertaining. And then she'll say, "Why did you start that conversation? I can't get it out of my head." Now you know.
Every time I hear the word linoleum, I said it right, or linoleum, I am instantly transported back to a day in a bar in Key West, Florida with Jimmy Rucker when we were both in the same port on the same day.
Right.
And I don't think I've ever talked to him that I haven't brought up linoleum, and that was 60 years ago.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
So,
I do the same thing to my poor sister. I don't know why she hates me. I don't.
you want me to list some things and email them to you?
Yeah, email make them nice. Don't don't make me cry.
So I think we've covered scripting pretty good, unless you have some questions and you want to move on to controller.
I do, because and we went to second, 2 and 3, and I'm not going to give them to you. You have to go back and listen. That's why we do these things, but it's frame control. You're not reacting anymore, and I'm thinking that's where the rehearsal studio and the script chunks are gonna help. You're leading. The buyer feels like it was their idea. You've made a connection. They're listening, they're buying in.
Absolutely. Um, the and the controller, when I first saw that, I thought, well, that's a little strong, but that's what it is. I call it setting the table. Hello, I'm Ben Gay, and you're not. I'm an expert in this. You're an expert in you and your needs and your wants. Let's see if we got a match. And I set the table up by explaining what I'm going to be doing. Then I'm going to ask for action at the end. It's a little smoother than that, but I'm going to ask for action at the end, and they will have some sincere questions. And as we go along, I'll be straight with you. You be straight with me. Fair enough. Fair enough. I get them to lock into the things that I'm going to do if necessary. I'm going to ask you questions or question your premise of various things. And you have the right to do that to me. Fair enough. Fair enough. So
So
once we've
you're
agreed,
reaching agreements.
right,
You just said it. So you're making agreements with each other, and it's hard to back out of those.
right. And if they try, you have the right. Then I go frequently, we promised we wouldn't do that to each other. You don't, the example I use all the time is, I got to think it over. I got to check with my brother who's an accountant in Cleveland, and but
Who
I
doesn't exist?
yeah, you don't have a brother-in-law. He's not an accountant, and you don't know anybody in Cleveland.
Nope.
But other than that, so but I mentioned that in the setup. When we get down to the end, I ask you to take action. I want you to promise me you're not going to tell me you got to check with your brother-in-law in Cleveland who's an accountant, because you don't have a brother-in-law, and if you do, he's not in Cleveland, and if he's in Cleveland, he's not an accountant. So, fair
No,
enough?
he's sitting with a beer can on the
Yeah.
on a
So
bench. But how
when
do you
they
do with Ben? I have to ask because I just wrote this down and I wanted to ask it before. Because one of the most, I think, I'm just guessing, the most frequent objections you're going to hear is, I have to ask my wife, I have to ask my husband. And that's always like, oh, geez. But it's fair because if you're going to spend, I don't know, anything over $50, you probably should be asking your wife or your husband.
Yeah, and it's just a courtesy I have. I understand that. Gigi the other day saw something, I guess, online or in a catalog or something, and she wanted a new pair of jeans. I don't know what you call them, but to me, they're all Levi's, but a new pair of jeans and a couple of blouses. And she said, "Is that okay?" And I said, "Honey, you don't have to ask me if you can buy a pair of pants." She always does, but I reminded her, and she said, "It's a courtesy we
It's a
offer to,
courtesy,
yeah,
right?
that we offer to each other." She said, "You rarely buy anything without asking me." I said, "That's because you're always with me. You're standing there. What am I going to do? Ignore you?" So I understand the courtesies and all, and let's say it's a $50 something, and it wasn't worthy of having a gathering of everybody involved
Right.
for a $50 decision. Say, fantastic. Give her a buzz and tell her what you're doing. I'll wait, and then look down at your notepad and start taking notes. He or she is supposed to call the other person and ask. If, however, it's a vacuum cleaner or you're getting up in some interesting money, and
Or
it's
a
gonna
new
be
car.
or
Yeah,
a new
that happened.
car. Yeah,
Right.
and it's gonna be with you for 25 or 30 years if it's a
Yeah, look
vacuum
what's in the
cleaner.
driveway, honey. Don't you love it? Nope.
Yeah, no. Even I am not that stupid.
Some people are.
Yeah, of course you're gonna ask, but that's part of setting the table. If it's a car, you want the man and the woman there. Everybody involved there. If it's a younger person and the father's or mother's gonna pay for it, you want the one who's getting it and the one who's paying for it there. You can't
Right.
sell a car to somebody who doesn't want that car, and you can't sell that car to somebody who has no way of getting it financed without the mother, father, aunt, uncle, somebody else involved. So have them there. That's what I've told you someday. The Closers is famous, and millions have been sold, various versions of it. And I found a contract. I was going through a tickler file, cleaning it out, and I found a contract from almost 20 years ago, as best I recall, selling the rights to the Closers in India. And people always say, my book is in 10 languages. Well, in this contract, the Closers, I released the rights to the Closers. I think it was just part one back then in India in 26 different languages and dialects. So I think I can now say, because I know of others in more less esoteric languages, Spanish, French, etc. I think I can now say, well, the Closers is published in probably 50 different languages now. 26 of them are in India. I had no idea. But the point being, people will deal with you on any level in any way if you set the table up front, have the qualified people there to buy. You don't give your sales presentation to the receptionist. Everyone in the company, including if you're calling on a company, everyone in the company, including the janitor, can say no. But buried in that beehive somewhere is the one person who can say yes. That's who you give your sales presentation to.
So
How do you
really what you have to know is who you're talking to. You
absolutely.
don't just open your mouth and go, "I got this great thing. I mean, it's wonderful. It's purple. You need it." How do you even know, can they buy it? Do they want to buy it? Is their wife gonna clobber them? You need to kinda suss these things out
And
before
get
you
them there.
start with your script.
If they're important to the decision, get them there.
Right.
Or have them available via Zoom or what have you, because the appeal it to a higher authority, that's something they probably do teach in prospect school. I'd love to, but I have to check with, well, that means you're talking to the wrong person, or
Exactly.
they're lying. They don't have to
Or
check
both.
with any.
Yeah, yeah. I listen, anytime you go into somebody's office, the person that opens up that window or sits at that front desk is the gatekeeper.
Mhm.
You've got to get past them, but they're not gonna make any decision other than to allow you access to the gatekeeper, the person who really is in charge.
And therefore, they're in charge. It's like the chief of staff in the White House.
Right, Susie
They
Wiles,
decide
yeah.
yeah, they decide who meets with the president, how you get on the I don't care if you're a secretary of whatever. She decides if you're gonna get in, when, and for how long. So in some ways, because she's the controller of information, she's the most powerful woman in the world, one of the most powerful people in the world. I had a lady, I inherited her when I became president of Holiday Magic Cosmetics. They grabbed a lady who was a secretary to somebody else, rolled her chair over in front of my office, and said, "This is your secretary."
Was
And her
that
name was
Marty?
Marty Conley. Martha was her real name, but Marty is what everybody called her. Marty Conley arrived, and I had no idea as they wheeled her across the floor. I'm thinking, I wonder if she can type. Well, what I should have asked,
You learned. So
yeah, Marty took over my life, business life, personal life, acted as a marriage counselor at times, decided who saw me, what products we put in the line, because I would say to her, "Marty, see if you and the ladies like this." If they didn't, that was the end of the story. If they
mhm.
did, it went off to the art department to get a name and a label done and all. Marty decided from the time she and I teamed up, she decided, and we had dozens of different products and flavors and so on. She decided, I don't care who introduced it at the big convention, Marty Conley decided if it was going to be in there or not. And I've told you this before. I was talking to one of my vice
I love
presidents,
that.
Vance Powell, and he had some idea. And I said, "That's good. We'll do that, Vance." This is by phone. He was in Texas. I was in California. He said, "Well, let me speak to Marty." And I said, "No, we're gonna do it, Vance. It's approved." He says, "I know, but I really want this done. Could I speak to Marty, please?"
'Cause she was in charge. You know what I've
Yes.
often wanted to ask you, because when you talk about Marty with such affection and
Yeah,
such respect, but how did she and Dr. Napoleon Hill get along?
fine.
Oh,
Uh,
good.
and the way he didn't have to deal with her coming in because he was brought to me by William Penpatrick, the owner of the business. And he might ask Marty as he came in, is Ben tied up? But he wasn't asking permission. He owned the
Mhm.
company, he owned the office. He could hire and fire her in the chair she was sitting in. So so she
This is the first time I've heard about the chair. That just went into my memory bank.
she but anyway, she came to me as a secretary, and I was trying to decide, will this last a day or two, before she's gone? Once I figure out if she can type or not. I had a bad experience with that when Jimmy Rucker and I were back in Atlanta running a very successful distributorship. He hired a secretary. I'm not sure we needed one, other than you had to have someone sitting at that desk in front. But he hired a secretary, and I walked in, and there she sat. And she had the best look, I can still picture the best looking set of legs I have ever seen. And
That's
all of
why
this
she
was,
was hired.
yeah, well, yes. But I looked at her and thought, "Whoa," and we were still sort of young and wild. And she said, Ben, I don't even think we went through Mr. Gay. Ben, I'm so and so. And I said, well, welcome to our little family. That made 3 of us in that office. I go in my office and sit down, and Jimmy must have given her something to type, and I hear, "Whoops, whoops." Now she's looking for the whiteout after 3 taps, and I thought, my suspicion was right. She was hired because of the legs. She doesn't know what a type. She was probably astounded to see a typewriter, but Marty was not that way. She
I'm
was
sorry.
cocked. She was cocked, loaded, ready to go. She was just waiting for somebody to put her in the right spot, and she became chief of staff. And I can't, I mentioned the products and who got in and who didn't, and Vance Powell saying, I really want this done. It causes me to think back. I think Marty ran even more than I knew she ran. There were probably things that got done or not done that were never even run by me as an option. She stopped them at that point. I've got a good friend, had a good friend. He's since passed away, and he used to talk about who was that lady. He founded CEO Space
Yeah,
and Bernie Dorman.
Barney Dorman. Right.
Yeah. Well, the way Bernie Dorman knew of me was his father worked for me in Mind Dynamics, one of our seminar companies. And Marty took a liking to him. So Bernie, as a 15-year-old kid, almost lived in my office when he was in town or in the city, whatever. When he was around, because Marty would just let him in. He could walk into meetings and sit, and he knew to sit quietly, and then later he might ask some questions and so on. But years go by, and he calls me and says, I want you to speak at the CEO Space thing. I'd never heard of CEO Space, but it was a big deal. And I said, all right. And he said, you and I go back a long way. And I said, I didn't know that. Refresh my memory. He said, I was that 15-year-old kid that Marty Conley used to let in your office all the time. I said, all right, now I do know who you are, and so on. We were doing pretty good sized business 30 or more years after Marty Conley let him in the office. Everything I did with CEO Space and Bernie Dorman was based on Marty letting him into my office as the chief of staff at Holiday Magic Cosmetics. So you better have a script ready for the gatekeeper. He or
And
she
yeah, and
may.
that's what I wanted to ask you. I mean, did you ever watch her or note who she was letting in and how they were doing it?
I saw the effects of it. I don't, if I
Right.
was standing there next to her listening, then they would have probably looked up and addressed me. But there were people who I knew were trying to get in to see me who never got in to see me, and they never got past Marty. Bernie Dorman figured out at 15 how, I don't know what he did, but he figured out how to get past her. And he still, until the day he died, he and I were still benefiting from Marty's decision there. But she was protective of me like a guard dog. You had to have a good story. And as she told me one day, she said, if I let someone in there and you take action on it and they weren't the right person, who's going to get the blame? And I
Good
said, well,
question.
I would never tell you, Marty.
I wouldn't dare.
I wouldn't dare. But you're right. You would get the blame. Why did you let that idiot in here and so on?
And if it
Um,
happened enough times, she would lose credibility without knowing
yeah.
that she was losing your faith in her credibility.
She also used to come in because the door to her, she was backed right up against the side door into my office. That's where they came in. So she, if she chose to, could leave the door cracked. She could probably just listen through the door pretty good. I mean, she and I were 10 feet apart. The guests might have been a little farther than that down the table, but whatever. And more than once, dozens of times, she would come in and say, Mr. Gay, I hate to interrupt this, but you've got another appointment waiting. And I'd say, okay, I'm sorry. Because I knew what that meant. What it meant was Marty thought I was wasting my time. I had a schedule. I knew what the schedule was. I knew who she had booked and when and so on. But that was her way of saying, I think I made a mistake. This meeting is over. And that was the end of whoever that was or whatever their proposition was. So if you don't have a chief of staff, either become your own or get a good one and make sure it's the right one and then trust them. And if somebody's got a good enough script to get past her, super. I probably should say to everybody, what as they came in, I should say, just out of curiosity, what did you tell Marty to get in here? I never
Yeah,
did, but I should
that's my
have.
question. And, and people who are listening to us, you need to get past that gatekeeper. We
Yep.
don't call anybody secretaries these days. I think we'd get, punched in the nose. But office assistant or, as Marty was, your chief of staff, you have to really pay attention to how you're speaking with these people, how you're selling to these people, how you're communicating with them, because they can let you in or they can stop you cold forever.
Yeah, and without being condescending. You
Right,
don't you
right. It's
don't pat
just
them on the head and
no.
say, "Honey,
Can
sweetheart,
you
if
get me a
you"
cup of coffee? Try that around here. You'll
I
get
I would
something.
you said that, and I had a ca it looked like I don't know, maybe the room was used for something else before I got there, but it had behind curtains almost a whole kitchenette, and it would have been easy to keep coffee on and to offer me coffee, and when you said that, I thought the thought of Marty Conley bringing me coffee does not compute.
See, this
Lord,
is why I can't work in other people's offices. Number 1, I'm an introvert. Number 2, I play with scissors. Number 3, if you want coffee, you can get your own damn self. I'm not gonna do it.
right.
So
Well, I don't know what her reaction would have been, but it never crossed my mind to ask.
see, you're a very smart man.
Uh,
But, these are things that, you're not just walking in. I think I'm trying to formulate this as I'm, thinking out loud, but you're not just walking in and assuming that you're going to get to whoever makes the decisions. You need to understand who you're talking to, what you're doing, and as many times as it takes, or if you get a solid no, I don't know what you do then, but you have to pay attention. You have to use some empathy. You have to listen. You mostly have to shut up and listen, as far as I can tell, but that your biggest threshold is going to be getting past that gatekeeper.
Absolutely, and probably more crucial than the actual sale you came to give, because
Exactly.
I don't care if it was perfect, it doesn't make any difference if no one hears it, and
And
again,
nobody can make the decision. If you're
yeah,
talking to the janitor in the hallway, you might have sounded terrific, but he can't help you.
this is not a sales training thing, but real quick before we wrap this up, this conversation has reminded me of so many Martyisms. One
I
day,
love her. I love it when you talk about her.
my first wife, now passed away, Marcia. We had an airport and a Cessna dealership, so she took flying lessons and met a lovely lady who was a friend of Amelia Earhart, and they struck up a friendship. And so Marcia was to be in the Powder Puff Derby across once a year across the nation race. This one was from somewhere in Southern California to Latrobe, Pennsylvania. And this lady, Ray Robertson, and Marcia were to be in the race. On the morning they go to leave, uh, Marcia's packing up her stuff, getting ready to go, and the doorbell rings. And I open the door, and there stands Marty with her suitcase. And I said, "Hi, honey, what are you doing here?" She said, "Marcia is not leaving young Ben with you unsupervised."
What?
So
Young Ben was your son.
yeah, it was our son, and he was young, a toddler, but still, I thought I was gonna take care of him, maybe bring him to the office and have Marty take care of him or help or whatever.
Uh,
Marty moved into the house while Marcia was gone on the Powder Puff Derby adventure, and just there wasn't anything, "Hi, how are you?" She just moved in, took over, fixed dinner, took care of young Ben, I went about my business, and so on. When Marcia came back. Marty was packed up and ready to go, and she left. And there was nothing really said about it. It was in my mind, of course she's here. She runs every aspect of my business. Why
And your
not my
life.
yeah, why not my personal life?
Oh my
So
gosh. I know you said that she did. I mean, you were kind of joking that she ran your personal life as well, but you hadn't really shared that. So now I believe you.
I
I
haven't thought
didn't
of it.
doubt it before, but now I believe you.
I hadn't thought of it in years until you got me off on Marty Connolly. And I would ask Marty, or Marcia and I having dinner tonight? Of course, I was going home. We were going to have dinner somewhere, but I meant, are we going out to dinner? Yes, she'll be at the Caprice at 7 o'clock. Thank you very much. It was like
Well,
having,
did
it's like,
Dr. Napoleon, you know, share your, you've got that I can't even think now. He taught you how to put everything on paper and in your, what do you call it? Your
a
daily
daily
plan.
success system.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Did he teach her as well?
I don't know.
I
She
bet
may
he
have picked it up.
did.
Yeah, and she may have picked it up by osmosis because she was right there with me as I was writing things down and scheduling things. And does this conflict with anything, Marty?
Right.
And so on. So she would have had to pick it up by osmosis. Somebody on the internet the other day, email, was talking about years ago, I had a boss, and it was the daughter of my business partner in a later business. He's now gone, but she's still in real estate in this area. But years ago, I had a boss who wrote everything down and scheduled it and numbered them in the order of their importance. And I still go by that today. I haven't seen her. Her name is Debbie Ambroff. I haven't seen her in probably 30 or 40 years. Although I know she's around, I see her ads and so on. But I thought that's really interesting. Dr. Hill taught me a system, and she learned it by observation. I didn't
Hmm.
ever call everybody together and say, I'm going to teach you a system. But she saw what I was doing, I guess, looked over my shoulder or what have you, picked it up, and now she teaches it to her people in real estate. So here we are 50, 60 years later, and Dr. Hill's random conversation with me goes on. By my clock, we're about out of time.
We are. And listen, thank you. I do want to talk with you some point this week or maybe early next week where we can get on a Zoom call so I can ask you how to structure, this rehearsal studio for the closers. I think it's important. But anyway, everybody get your copies of the Closers Parts 1 and Part 2, and they are available at Ronzoni, Ronzone books on eBay. And this is why these matter. Everything we're breaking down on this show, the levels, the frameworks, the field tactics, it all lives in these pages 1 and 2. And Ben Gay didn't pull these from a whiteboard. It came from the field. And these books are where it was documented. And as he's noted, they have sold millions of copies. They sell to this day. So if you're serious about climbing these levels, you need to be working from the same source material that we're working from. And Ben is here. He's the expert. He built this. So pay attention. Every episode is going to make more sense, hit harder, and stick longer if you've got these in your hands. So, Ben, any final kind of thoughts there?
No, I'm good, other than just to tell you how much I enjoy these calls and our listeners, and knowing that perhaps we're doing some good somewhere. I get messages from this and, a seminar I did in Dallas 50 years ago, but the one they almost always start out the same way. You may not remember me, but, and then they say, one day you said, or one day in a seminar, or one day nowadays, one day on a Zoom call with Denise Griffitts, whatever you said, and I wrote it down. And I'm in this, Denise, for the money. Don't make no mistake about that. I like the money, but I don't get a warm, fuzzy feeling when some account pays and the money hits the bank and my account folks tell me about it. I get warm, fuzzy feelings when somebody says, you changed my life. Because Dr. Napoleon Hill and William Penn Patrick and my father and mother, but my father was the dominant member of the family. They all changed my life by taking a little time with me and giving me some information that I needed to hear. And I hope we're doing that for other people. If not, I wouldn't be here. Denise, assuming you can hear me,
Oh,
you know,
yeah, Zoom is giving me fits, but I wanted to tell you that years ago, you and I got on the podcast, and I don't even remember how it happened. This was before you and I started the Closers, this podcast. And I remember telling you that a very good friend of mine had listened to that first interview that I did with you. Honestly, I don't remember how it even came to be, but she called me and she worked with Tony Robbins for about 11 or 12 years. She was outside at night walking her puppy dogs. They're both gone now. It was a long time ago. And she said, I hear this. She called me at 9 o'clock at night, which, unless your house is on fire or somebody's dead, I don't
with
answer
it,
the phone. But it was her, and oh, what's going on? So I answered. She said, Denise, I'm listening to you and Ben Gay the third, and it's like listening to two friends sitting in front of a fire having a brandy. And that has stuck with me all of these years. So recently I get another text from her. So I'm listening to you and Ben Gay still. So we're having an impact. You have an impact.
that's good to know, and I appreciate it. You never know who needed to hear that at that time. The old saying, I think it's from the Bible, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, because the teacher has always been there in various forms, multiple people, one person, one situation, or what have you, always been there. When you're ready to hear it, that's when somebody appears to make an impact. But the student had to be ready. The person who says, I heard you say 40 years ago in Dallas, needed to hear that day in Dallas 40 years ago. And if it hadn't happened, the moment would have passed and maybe never reappeared. So, uh,
Exactly. Well, listen, I have a couple of questions for our audience. Look at your last three lost deals. I mentioned this last week. Where did I lose control? Was I leading or was I reacting? When did the deal shift or when did it die? What level four me could have done differently? And write it down. Listen, everybody, thank you for spending your time with us each week. And we will see you next Wednesday with another sales infiltration session, and get those books. Ben, I'll see you next week and thank you.
thank you. Have a wonderful day.
I'm going to. I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but I'm going to go do something important. So I'll talk to you later.